Well, this blasted phone has cost y'all one of the best minutes I ever had. And not because of what I was saying, but I had a deer walk right up on me. And she just sat over here looking at me. And I'm kind of out here in the woods. I had to stop and help my neighbor. And I thought, well, I'm close. I'll run out here. I'm looking back over there to see if I had her in the picture. And this thing, every time now it switches to low power mode, it turns off the recording. So, yeah, here's your victory minute, and my heart's just broke. She's the prettiest little thing you ever seen. Well, what was I talking about? Well, I was talking about how this is Wednesday, and as I'm making this right here for Christmas, and I was looking over what I was going to be speaking on tonight from Isaiah 9:6, and there was something in it that I thought I need to share. That passage it starts with the words "nevertheless." In chapter 8, it talks about how judgment was coming into the children of Israel because of all their great sin. But nevertheless, there was going to come a light. A light was going to come into people that walked in darkness and in the shadow of death. And Chris is talking about Jesus coming into the world. And this is the passage goes on where he's called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given. Of course, very much what the angel said to those shepherds in Luke chapter 2, verse 11. So anyway, those people that he was specifically talking to said that were the people from the land of Zebulun and Naphtali, two of the tribes that their land allotment was far to the north. In fact, the area they lived in was called the Galilee of the Gentiles. They were totally surrounded by the Gentile nations, a picture of the world. They were catch this, because this is what I'm making this minute to tell you. They lived as close to the world as any of the people of God. And they lived furthest from their spiritual center as any of the people of God. That's why it was so important for them to go down to the feast, the religious feast and festivals and different things that went on, because it's what kept them close. Because otherwise they lived in a world greatly influenced by the culture around them. And you say, well, thanks for the history lesson, preacher. Well, you and I in this world, now especially those of us that live in the States or in the West in general, but even if you watch these things, and a lot of you do, on the other side of the planet, and you're in what we would call the East and the Middle Eastern, African, continents and Asia and those kinds of things, you're being more affected by the West than most people realize. The West, the thought of it is based out of Rome, the Roman Empire. There's a lot to do with prophecy and those kinds of things about that, but it's just a reality. That type of thinking is what moves the world culturally, okay? And if you don't believe me, and if you live on the other side of the planet, you walk outside and you look around at people, and you'll see more people in blue jeans and t-shirts than you do in traditional cultural clothing. It's just the influence, the music, all of those kinds of things. I mean, frankly, there's more boy bands coming out of Korea now than there are coming out of the American music scene. And it sounds American, and they dance like Americans. So that's just a reality. I've been over in that part of the world quite a bit. A lot of the people that are conservative over there that's trying to hold on to their culture, they don't like the influence of America. Now, in some ways, they're tyrannical in it. And in some ways, frankly, they just don't want their kids and grandkids turned into a bunch of weirdos like a bunch of our people act. So anyway, back to my point. They live the closest to the world. Now, those of us that live in the States, we're in the epicenter of it. We live so close to culturally where the world's going. I mean, it's hard to tell a typical Christian from a non-Christian in attitude, in just being connected to the culture, musically, in the arts, what we think of in science, all of those kinds of things. We're so driven by culture, okay? And so they were a people that were very much influenced by their culture, and they were far from their spiritual center, which was Jerusalem. So what's my point? My point is, if you live in the world we live in, you better recognize how close to the culture you are, and you better learn to set up a dividing line. You've got to learn that you are in this world, but you're not of this world. And you've got to recognize the things that are dark. Now, the only way you can is to be spiritually minded, have the Word of God in you. It's the Word of God that divides truth from error, right from wrong. So that's just a reality. But you've got to be able to see it. And a lot of you that are watching me right now, you didn't grow up with a Bible in your home. You didn't grow up with a spiritual influence. There's a lot of things you think are right that are dead wrong. I deal with this all the time in the church. People get their feelings hurt all the time about things that are accepted in our culture. And then I say something about it in the pulpit and they all have a stroke over it, get mad at me, don't want to come back to church, and they'll deny their own children's the preaching of salvation because there's some little something in this world Brother Todd don't agree with. But it's not Brother Todd that don't agree with it. I'm just telling you what the Word of God says. And you be mad at somebody, be mad at God. But the reality is we live in it so close we don't have a problem with it. We don't see the difference. We just don't recognize it. And I have people come to me all the time. Brother Todd, is this right? Brother Todd, is this wrong? Well, one, I always ask, well, what's the Bible say? Okay. But even if you're really trying to navigate this, you don't have to look at a thing and ask, is it right or wrong? You can always ask the question, where's this going? Where's this going? Because a lot of things temporary feel good in the moment, but you got to ask the question, where's it going? And where's it going in the next generation? And so you can allow or disallow. You got to watch the things you allow on your TV set at home, the games your kids play. You got to realize that the world is always trying to encroach. The world's always trying to encroach, trying to emasculate your sons, it's trying to whore out your daughters. And if you don't think that's just the straight, honest truth, I'm sorry, you can't deal with it, because that's just the way it is. I mean, they're trying to twist everything around. It is satanic, and it is right in line with the world, the flesh, the devil, death, all of those enemies we face. You've got to learn to recognize it, okay? The only way you're going to do that is to get to doing something about it. Okay, you got to recognize how close to the dark we are, and you got to make certain that you do things that bring light into your world. Those people that lived up there during those times, they lived far from their spiritual center, so they had to be very intentional living in the land they lived in and the culture they lived in to make, let's say, to put Jesus first, as it were. That they made special provision beyond what people that where their culture was just, let's say in our world, if you live in a very Christianized society, okay, then some things are just easier. Now, like here in the Bible Belt, when I was a boy, things were different culturally, and the internet's changed a lot of this. I use this statement when I preach sometimes. I say, back when I was a kid, you had to go over on the wrong side of the tracks, hide around, sneak around to be a pervert, find some dirty book or whatever. Well, now you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. I can pick up that phone. I can make this minute pick up that phone. I can watch the most god-awful porn on the planet. Nobody ever know about it but me and whoever the guy is from the NSA is that keeps track of my phone. Right? It's just the world we live in. Okay? When you're in a cultural situation where there is an expectation, some things are easier. Now, it's easier to fake them and all that, and we can talk about that for hours. But the reality is, if you recognize the culture you live in, is basically America's a pagan country now. We're just a pagan country. So you have to recognize that with that influence around you, you've got to be very intentional about what you're doing with yourself, with your family, with your friends, about bringing light in. How do you do that? Well, one, make certain you're in church. Two, make certain you've got the Word of God in your life and you're praying and you're being a witness. Look for opportunities to, as it were, get to Jerusalem. Can I put it that way? I hope you follow what I'm saying. If we live in that land of shadow of death and Galilee of the Gentiles, we got to make sure we get to Jerusalem as much as we can. This Saturday night at 5 o'clock, Christmas Eve service at Victory. You'll be able to tune in live if you're too far away. But if you live within a couple of hours of here, I'd get to church. If Victory's what you kind of watch on the internet and those kind of things, make a special trip. Just like you lived in Zebulun or Naphtali, you got to make a special trip to Jerusalem. Come on down at 5. We're going to have a great time. We're going to have a bunch of people, I think, being baptized. And so it'll be neat because it's going to be extremely cold, and we have an outdoor baptistry. So it'll be fun to watch Brother Todd shiver when he gets out of the water. Water's heated, but the air around it ain't. But we'll have a great time. we'll have a worship service. There'll be time where I talk to the kids. We have a real special thing. Bring your kiddos, and we'll talk with the kids, and then we'll challenge ourselves with the word, and man, we'll go out and it'll mean something, you know. But look for something real to happen. And then, of course, we're going to having service on Christmas Day. You'll be even able to tune in online, but it's going to be a very reserved service, and it's just for whoever can be there. I've told everybody, y'all come on Christmas Eve and get to doing family stuff. But if you're going to be around, then you can check around. But what I'm just saying is look for opportunities where you can build yourself spiritually in a very dark world. You know, I don't stand around in the dark. Somebody turn on the light. Let's see what we're doing. Let's go somewhere. Let's put our feet down somewhere that matters, and we're not going to fall off some proverbial cliff somewhere. That makes sense? I hope so. I hope you have a great day. Now, those of y'all down here in the middle of the country and coming into Texas, y'all be careful in this cold spell. Look for neighbors to help. And if all the lights go out, you know, now we're running down here in Texas, we can't run on oil and nuclear energy anymore. We all depend on these windmills that done trashed up the place around here, and it don't ever work whenever you need them. So if the lights go out again, y'all help your neighbor out. Get some firewood split up, make some for you, for your neighbor, and get the generators gassed up and all that. All right, enough of that. Just be aware of the world you live in, and be aware it's up to you to handle your culture, and it's up to you to make sure you and your family have light, okay? And if I don't get to see you beforehand, I'll see you on Christmas Eve night. All right, love you guys. Y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.